Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military with Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 29th of December of 2025. Today we have a lot of very interesting, and this will start. So once again, according to my understanding of the situation, Zelensky rejected the document, the plan that was prepared by the United States of America and the Russian Federation. He didn't reject this proposal officially. He said that we need time, we need first to have a referendum, then we need to have a ceasefire for another 60 or 90 days. Then we're gonna have to ask people what do they think about the situation. Furthermore, we need to understand what is going to happen with the security guarantees. We want to have 50 years of security guarantees provided by the United States of America. There are still a lot of questions about the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, so Zelensky made everything he can just with one purpose, to postpone the final talks, the final negotiation process, and to get better conditions before this process. So this is the situation. Obviously, this is something that doesn't fit the requirements of the Russian Federation and the United States of America. They have their own plan, they have their own demands, and we see that everything as of now goes not according to their scenario. So that is why today the President of the Russian Federation had another meeting with commanders and with the Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, and the President held a briefing on the situation in the Special Military Operations Zone, and he had lots of reports about the situation on the ground, and furthermore he made certain orders. So the situation seems is going to continue developing in 2026, and the Russians will continue their offensive operation or offensive operations through the entire line of combat contact. So let's start discussions, and first let's talk about the situation in the Zaporozhye direction. During the previous 12 hours, the Russians, according to information we have, managed to improve their position significantly. The Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation and the head of the group of forces Dibrova reported Vladimir Putin that as a result of clashes, the Russians managed to establish complete control over the settlement by the name of Lukyanovska. So this is the first settlement on the Russia's way towards the settlement of Orekhov from the west. So these are the changes on the ground between the dates, according to the report of the General Staff. So this is for example, the situation by the end of the 27th, this is the end of the 28th, we made changes yesterday, and this is the situation by the end of the 29th of December. The Russians continue improving their positions. Now the next settlement is the settlement of Pavlovka that the Russians are tasked to improve their positions where, and the Russians will move further in the direction of Nova Yakovlevka, and then further and further in the eastern direction until they get to the city of Orekhov. Furthermore, today pro-Russian sources stated, and the Commander-in-Chief Valery Gerasimov reported that currently there are very heavy clashes already on the territory of the city of Orekhov. So for the first time since the beginning of the special military operation, Russians officially stated that the clashes began on the territory of the city of Orekhov, not for the settlement of Malotokmachka, not for the village of Novodanilovka, not for the settlement of Novoandreevka. The Russians officially stated that the battle for the city of Orekhov has begun. As of now, we don't know for sure where exactly are the Russian positions, where are the Ukrainian positions, so as of now, we're not going to change the map until we get additional clarifications. Another important video was published today by pro-Russian sources from the area of the city of Nikolaev. Let's take a look at this video. This video was published by Russian Rubicon group, and here we can see how Russians were attacking with FPV drones deep inside of the territory of Ukraine. So this is a very important video because this video shows the technologies that the Russians are using right now. They can attack deep inside of the territory of Ukraine without ground drones, without missiles, without aviation. They can use less visible drones like these ones and to attack equipment, helicopters and aircrafts through the entire territory of Ukraine. And of not just aircrafts, but also boats, which is also a very important situation. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the area of the city by the name of Gulyai Polya. If you remember, during the previous video we discussed that Ukrainians launched a counter-offensive operation in this area, and based on that video we adjusted the map. And for example, today the Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, Gerasimov, stated that Ukrainians are no longer counter-attacking. So it's very difficult to understand what exactly is happening because Ukrainians are counter-attacking. We have this video, but from the other side, the Russians are saying that Ukrainians are not doing this. The only thing that Ukrainians are able to do right now is to make another attempt to slow down the Russians and to slow down their advance. As for the changes and as for different updates, during the previous 12 hours, pro-Ukrainian sources adjusted their maps. We will adjust this map also before the next video, but according to pro-Ukrainian sources, currently Russians established almost complete control over these fields and tree lines to the south of the settlement of Gulay-Pole, but at the same time, pro-Ukrainian sources show the city of Gulay-Pole as mainly as a territory in contested area. So we see that there is a gap, and you know that today we start seeing more and more updates, more and more reports from different Western experts about the fact that currently there is a very huge gap between the pro-Ukrainian sources and the real situation on the ground. Now let's move further. Let's discuss the situation in the area of Novopavlovka. Once again, another area with a very big gap between Russia's pro-Russian sources and pro-Ukrainian sources. Pro-Ukrainian sources report that Russians just approached the settlement of Filia, but neutral mappers and pro-Russian sources stated that Russians continued their offensive operation around the settlement by the name of Novopavlovka. So as you can see, there are very heavy clashes. The Russians began assault operation on this settlement a long time ago, probably 2 or 3 months ago, but yet the Russians haven't managed to establish complete control. Ukrainians control the situation. They show fierce resistance, and we understand why, because the settlement of Novopavlovka is a key settlement before moving further deep inside of the Dnipro region. Now let's move further. As for the Pokrovsk agglomeration, as for the Dobropolye direction, during the previous 12 hours we haven't received anything special. The most important update is coming from the settlement of Novoshakhova. The Russians, according to pro-Ukrainian sources, established complete control over the territory. So this is the situation by the end of the 27th of December. This is the 28th of December. According to Russians, the settlement of Vilna fell, and by the end of the 29th of December, the Russians improved their positions around the settlement of Novoshakhova. But the thing is that Russians most likely will not announce this. They will not tell us about, let's say, taking under control the settlement, because they did this several months ago during the Russian offensive operation in August, before the Ukrainian counter-offensive. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but 4 months ago, pro-Russian sources already reported about complete over the territory, so that is why they will not confirm this control twice. So we're just waiting for additional locations further, maybe around the settlement of Novodonbass, and then we will adjust the map. Now let's discuss the situation in the Slaviansk direction. During the previous 24 hours, we received lots of important updates. This is another area where the Ukrainians counter-attacked, and this counter-offensive operation also failed. This video was published by pro-Russian sources, and here we can see how Ukrainians using 2 or 3 infantry fighting vehicles were counter-attacking. Several of them were destroyed, and one of them managed to get to the eastern part of the settlement of Svetopokrivska, but then Russians attacked the vehicle with 2 or 3 FPV drones, and Ukrainians from these infantry fighting vehicles began running away, probably towards their own positions. So this attack was repelled. This attack took place right exactly at this place, so we decided not to adjust anything. At the same time, pro-Russian sources continue reporting that the Russians are advancing further in the western direction, and currently the clashes are taking place for the settlements of Riznikovka and Zakitna. So this is the next line where the Russians are fighting for. We're talking about this territory. There are very heavy clashes right now, and this is a very important area because this area opens the road towards the next 2 settlements in this direction, the settlement of Krivoluka and Kaleniki. Furthermore, the Russians continue offensive operation in the Liman direction towards the river of Seversky Donets. For example, today the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that as a result of clashes, the Russians captured the village of Dibrova. Based on the report published by pro-Russian sources by the Minister of Defense, we have adjusted the map. So this is the situation by the end of the 28th of December, and this is the 29th of December. The Russians continue offensive, and the Russians are getting closer and closer to the Slaviansk power station, the most important station and the most important asset on this direction. Furthermore, the general staff, the head of the general staff, Valery Gerasimov, stated that currently the clashes are taking place in the city limits of the city of Liman, that Russians entered the settlement from 3 directions. When talking about this map, of course, we see a huge gap between the words that were of Valery Gerasimov and the current situation on the ground, according to geolocations. So we are waiting for additional updates, and if the head of the Russian army is saying the truth, then most likely we will see changes in coming days. Another important area is the Bohuslavka Borova direction. Probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, the Russians began their major offensive operation in this area just with one purpose: to establish complete control and to improve their positions along the river Oskol. So there were several settlements left for the Russians. The Russians, if you remember, probably 10 days ago or something like this, reported that they managed to improve their positions around the settlement of Novoplatonovka. This happened on the 15th and 16th of December of 2025. This is the map. This is basically the moment when the Russians began their offensive operation. By the end of the 16th of December, Russians reported that they managed to establish complete control over Novoplatonovka. And as you can see, 2 weeks passed since that moment, and Russians established control over the settlement of Bohuslavka. Today, this was reported also during the meeting that took place between the President of Russia and commanders of different groups. So based on the report, based on the official statement, we have adjusted the map. So these are the changes between 2 dates. Now Russians, according to this map, according to this configuration, have a very strong foothold along the river Oskol, and now Russians can try to cross the river Oskol, for example, in this area with the purpose to attack settlements on the Ukrainian side, and then to try to advance deeper inside of the Kharkiv region with the purpose to outflank and to encircle the contingent of the armed forces of Ukraine completely. Or Russians may try to continue offensive operation further in the southern direction and to attack the settlement of Borovo from at least 2 directions. So we believe that this area is going to be, we're going to face a lot of clashes in this area, and Russians will intensify their offensive operation, as it was reported also by the President of the Russian Federation. So as you can see, the situation is quite complicated. Furthermore, don't forget that the former commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine is going to return back to Ukraine. We're talking about Valery Zaluzhny. He was the commander-in-chief in 2022 and 2023. His last battle was the battle for the Zaporozhye counter-offensive operation, and after that counter-offensive operation, he was appointed as an ambassador of Ukraine on the territory of the United Kingdom. And now, according to different insights, he's going to return back in January, maybe on the 4th or the 5th of January, and this is a very important thing. So we need to understand that he is returning back to Ukraine not because he wants to replace Zelensky. There is no need to replace Zelensky while he is working according to some program or something like this. You know that we think that Donald Trump in the United States of America has a lot of data on Zelensky inner circle. Maybe probably they have lots of information about Zelensky himself. So, and due to the fact that Zelensky basically didn't told Trump and Putin anything specific regarding the peaceful settlement of the conflict, we believe that in coming days we would receive lots of updates about different economical schemas, financial schemas, and so on. And this can attack and this can strike the reputation of Zelensky, and this can lead to unpredictable consequences. So that is why the United Kingdom is trying to stay on the safe side, and they're saying the ambassador, the former, probably in the future ambassador, the former commander-in-chief in Kiev, with the purpose to, if anything happens, he might replace Zelensky and he may continue moving and following according to some program that we might not know. So this is the situation, so let's wait and see what is going to be next, but obviously the situation is critical. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds you to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.